go ahead and get started. So hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session, Scholarship Matchmaking, Facilitating Open Ed Collaborations. My name is Kate McNally Carter, and I am an open education librarian at the University of Houston and a member of the OEN Event Planning Committee.
And I'm Barb Thies, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement here at the OEN. We're really excited to have you all here on this first day and second session of OEN Engage. And to begin, we'll start with the basics. Some of you may have heard Dave kick off our first session with a land acknowledgement and our community norms. If you'd like to review either, the links are in the chat, along with the Native Land Digital site, where you can explore more about the Indigenous connections to the lands our fellow members inhabit, as represented by the communities themselves. I'm coming to you from St. Paul, which is very close to the confluence of the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers, which is also a sacred site known in many oral traditions as Bedote, the birthplace of the Dakota people, which, despite growing up very close to here, is something that I didn't learn until adulthood, which is an illustration of the erasure of Indigenous history and traditions in my area. And so I share this today as one very small act of helping to honor and revive that important heritage. This session is being recorded so that our fellow members who aren't present are aware of and can also engage with the exciting scholarship matchmaking tool that we're going to share about today. And we welcome you to introduce yourselves in the chat and use that space to submit any comments or questions that bubble up during the session, and we'll do our best to address them along the way.
Thanks so much, Barb. Okay, so before we shift into our discussion today, we'd like to start with a quick icebreaker. So we'd love to know if you prefer silence or if you enjoy listening to music while you're working, especially if you're focusing on a research project, just to get our minds primed for our discussion today. So if you do prefer music, what song, artist, or type of music really inspires you? Please share in the chat if you prefer. We will go ahead and I will go ahead and add mine to the chat as well. And then we'll be collecting the responses and adding them to a Spotify playlist, which will be shared with the community after the session.
All right. Thank you. Hopefully we get some songs to be able to populate that playlist. I'm seeing that a lot of folks do share that need for silence to concentrate. So the goal of this session is to share a tool that our event planning committee has developed for you to use as a means of connecting with others in our community for professional collaboration. So Kate's going to introduce that and share a little bit of background on it. And then to help us kind of all get our gears moving on professional collaborations and how we can, excuse me, leverage this new tool to facilitate those connections. We'll have a chance to share what kind of research, writing, or collaborative topics you're interested in during our Padlet brainstorm. And we'll then use that feedback to create breakout rooms for those who would like to stay on at the end of the session and connect directly with others who share a certain area of interest.
Okay, so we'll start by establishing some context around this session and how it came to be. So primarily it's been driven by our community ethos and our guiding principles. So we strongly believe that the greatest asset of the Open Education Network is our amazing community of people. And we're grateful to be surrounded by such a collaborative and supportive group of open ed practitioners. So this word cloud from the 2025 community scan highlights all the things that our community has to offer. So whether you're newer to the field or you've been working in open ed for years, everyone has something to give and share. And we saw this as an opportunity to help facilitate collaboration within this strong and vibrant community that we have cultivated. So if you're here seeking a collaborator, we thank you for your embodiment of these qualities, and we appreciate your enthusiasm for collaboration. So one of the things that emerged from our amazing community was this very event. The scholarship matchmaking idea originated from feedback in our community scan. We heard you say that it would be helpful for the OEN to facilitate connections between community members and collaboration on open education projects. So for example, in our recent scan, we saw several examples of how OEN can support the work of its members. And this idea emerged from a combination of suggestions directly from our members. So one member, for example, shared that they would love to see OEN compile a list of community members who were willing to deliver virtual professional development to faculty or leaders in support of open ed efforts at fellow members' institutions. Others indicated an interest in OEN helping to facilitate opportunities for open ed practitioners and faculty to connect and collaborate with others in their discipline around open ed work and OER publishing projects. So this initiative responds to several suggestions for next steps for where the OEN can focus its efforts, including but not limited to leaning into our primary purpose as an organization, that of a connector and a community builder, facilitating relationships among members and creating supportive spaces for knowledge sharing. And then again, compiling the list of community members who are willing to deliver virtual professional development for fellow member institutions. So a lot of different ideas kind of coming together in this event. So our event planning committee took this idea and we've developed it over the recent months, thinking through how we could not only facilitate these connections here at OEN Engage, but also maintain this momentum of connection over the long term. So this is just a start of something that we hope will carry our collaboration forward. And we worked together to come up with a tool that could help us identify the folks who wanted to collaborate and share their ideas. So we developed a Google Sheets spreadsheet as a tool for facilitating this connection. So community members can use this to identify collaboration opportunities in 3 different categories. So articles and writing projects, including but not limited to helping with research articles, book chapters, and so on. Then we also have opportunities for people to find collaborators for conference presentations. So this could be recruiting panelists, or you may be looking for a collaborator to help you work on a proposal that you want to submit for a conference. And then we also have a tab for guest speaking engagements, which you can use to indicate if you need someone to deliver a presentation at your institution or some kind of event that you're hosting, or if you would be willing to offer your time to present for other institutions. So we'll be dropping a link in chat to this spreadsheet now so you can explore. And you can also find it under the Community Conversations and Networking tab in the Community Hub. So on this first tab, when you open the spreadsheet, you'll see some instructions, and it'll be followed by each tab for each of those 3 collaboration categories. And I do want to acknowledge that the idea came from the Creative Commons certificate alumni community, who uses a similar spreadsheet to identify calls for assistance with a variety of different projects. And so we've taken this idea and refined it to suit the needs of the OEN community. So I'll just briefly walk you through what you'll see on the spreadsheet. So for each tab on the spreadsheet, we have various columns where you can identify your project with an example listed on the top row for each of those different categories. So first, you can identify if your project is a need for assistance that you would like to solicit from the community, or if it's an offer of assistance that you would like to share with the community. And then you can describe your project and your goals, provide an estimate of your timeline, and workload considerations like the number of hours you anticipate dedicating to this, and also things like time zone and scheduling considerations that you'd like others to know. And for conference presentations, you can indicate when the conference is, when proposals are due, and so on. So depending on your specific needs. And then finally, we have a status column for you to indicate whether your project changes in any way. So either because it's maybe expired and you are no longer able to work on it, or maybe you've made a connection and no longer need assistance. And we hope that will be the outcome for many of your projects here. And then for the guest speaking engagements tab, the columns are a little bit different. So we have a column that you can indicate the presentation topics that you are looking for or willing to present on, the audience that you would be targeting, the presentation date or availability range, and then other notes such as event modality preference, allotted speaker time, time zone, so other kinds of similar considerations. Okay, and so before we move on, We will jump into the spreadsheet in a little bit, but we do want to move into a brainstorming activity. But before we do that, we want to check and see if there are any questions about the spreadsheet.
There is a question, Kate. It's from Amy. Will we be able to have faculty admin note that they need to be paid for speaking opportunities?
Yeah, so I think that would be something you would be able to add into the spreadsheet. I don't know if Barb, you'd like to speak on that, but I think, yeah, if you wanted to add any special notes related to your needs, that could be something you could put in there.
Yeah, there is kind of, to Kate's point, there's just a general notes section. So really anything that doesn't fit into the other column categories, you can note there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great. Well, if you think of any, please feel free to add them in chat. We can address them as they come up. Now you have a sense of where we're kind of going with this. We're hoping that you're already thinking of some really great ideas for collaboration. But as I mentioned before, we jump into the breakout rooms and start having our conversations about our different ideas. We would like to spend the next 15 minutes or so brainstorming on a Padlet to help us start thinking more broadly about our research and scholarship goals. And that can help us better identify how we can group everyone when we get to that point in the meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over to the Padlet. So Karen has popped the link to a Padlet in the chat. So we have 6 different questions here, no, 7 questions to kind of get us started thinking about all of our kind of scholarship goals and ideas. So we'll take each question one at a time, but please feel free to add comments on any of the questions that really particularly resonate with you. So we'll start here with our first question, which is, what is a gap or a new trend in open education that you wish somebody would research and publish on? Great. And we already have some comments. Okay. So it's showing up in this strange window for me. I don't know why, but I'll try to zoom in so that y'all can see these. How open education is helping institutions cope with the loss of our threatened loss of federal funding. Yeah, I think that's a very, very, timely topic that is definitely on a lot of our minds. Um, Heather writes technical education. So yeah, I think there's a lot in kind of the more traditional academic fields, but maybe not as much in technical workforce education. So vocational fields, I think that's a really great point. Stephen writes queer identities and open education. Yeah, definitely. Also, this trades are critical. So yes, definitely seeing a lot of need for that. Defiant Pigeon says best practices for how we as a field respond or pivot to inclusive/equitable access. Yeah, I think, that's something that we are mentioning. I think Dave mentioned in the meeting, the kickoff this morning that, that is something we're starting to see more and more as a need. All right, then we have research on OER/open pedagogy in K-12 and graduate studies. So yeah, I think that's really a great point. We do see a lot in undergrad and undergraduate like populations for open pedagogy, but maybe K-12 and graduate, maybe less so. Okay, and then yes, we've got best practices for AI use in OER, attribution, etc. Great idea. And then yes, neuro inclusion and open pedagogy and OER. That's absolutely a very great idea as well. Supporting faculty with concerns about using OER in a tenure review. Yeah, I think that's definitely a research area that I'm definitely interested in as well. And kind of getting to the idea of like, how can we help with incentivizing OER adoption, creation, and those kinds of things. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pop out of this one and see. We also have another note added here at the bottom, not necessarily something new, but ongoing examination of AI and OER. So yes, definitely a need for AI and OER kind of in analyzing those. Okay, so those are some really great ideas. Feel free to keep adding into that question. Just for the sake of time, I want to go ahead and move into the next question. And we'll kind of come back, we'll pop around, we'll see if there are other ideas that pop in. So what projects or ideas are you interested in pursuing? So as opposed to potentially a gap that you may have noticed, what are some things that are really of particular interest to you? So it looks like we have one submission on this so far. And Heather says, I'm working with our welding faculty to develop cutting edge industry forward training. So yeah, awesome. Technical, those vocational areas, we're getting it going. So that's great. And then Sirius Badger writes, that's amazing, Heather, it'd be so useful. So lots of love for that idea. Morgan writes, maintenance policies for OER and OER programs. That's a fabulous idea. Yes. Right. Jasmine says ones that are straightforward and will help my students. Yes, I think those are always, that is always the goal, right? We want to make sure what we're doing is going to be helpful. Andrew writes, how are we working to achieve, I'm sorry, archive these and preserve the scholarly record, especially with versioning and reuse? Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think we've definitely talked a lot about that at my institution, and it's kind of an ongoing question for us as well. So, student textbook purchasing decisions / thought processes. Yes, I think that's something that we could learn more about, and that could help inform us in our kind of OER promotion efforts. Building trust among faculty for OER. That's an excellent idea. Responsible Bee says best practices for ISBN and DOI use in OER. That's a great idea as well. So lots of things related to kind of publishing and preserving, sharing OER, maintenance. We've got some technical education. What else? Bethany writes, challenging the ever persistent marketing of inclusive access. So yes, it's really hard to keep our OER voices out there when inclusive access and the publishers have such strong voices in those spaces. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Kristen writes, LMS integration and student experience. Yeah. All right. Those are some great ideas. So again, I'll pop out of this question and see how we're doing and the next one. So please feel free to continue adding on if you have other projects or ideas that you're interested in pursuing. And then we can go ahead and pop into the next question. Is there a tool, method, or platform that you'd love to try but need a partner to explore it with? It looks like we have one question or one response to this question. And it looks like Jasmine writes a systematic review. And Ketty, yes, we just heard about Ketty a little bit this morning. And so, yes, I think I'm excited to learn more about it as well. Any other thoughts? This could be a research method or a publishing tool. Grateful Kangaroo says how to publish student created work. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of different ways you can go about that. And there are definitely some people in the open pedagogy space that could really, really help a lot with that. So, all right, qualitative analysis and a tool like In Vivo. Yes, I think that's definitely a tool that I would like to learn a little bit more. I've not had a chance to really get in there and play with it myself, and I think it's definitely something that requires some guidance. So yeah, I can definitely resonate with that feeling of needing a partner to help with that. Any other thoughts on this question? Serious Badger says making supplemental materials like quizzes, tests, etc. from open education books with AI. Okay, yeah. And then, though I hate AI, yeah, it's kind of a love-hate relationship for me. So, right. Well, again, so that we can kind of keep moving along, let's go ahead and pop into the next question. But if you feel like you want to add any additional comments there, please feel free to continue adding. And let's go ahead and jump into the next question. What skills or qualities do you bring to the table when you are working on a research project? Okay, so Heather, you've always got such great comments. So you have visionary leadership, driving initiatives like the Fast Forward Challenge and long-term OER adoption strategies, instructional design expertise. We have faculty training and engagement, content curation and creation, grant writing and project execution, advocacy and thought leadership, collaboration and research building or relationship building, equity and accessibility focus, adaptability and innovation, strategic communication. So I guess what I'm hearing is everybody needs to collaborate with Heather because she has all of the things. And I know Heather, she's amazing. So I highly recommend working with her. Jenny writes project management and generating ideas. Project management is so important, especially when you're talking about a research project and kind of keeping multiple collaborators on the same page. So I really appreciate that in a somebody's skill set. Abby writes, I like to write lit reviews, which has been appreciated by past research collaborators. Yes, and I can see why, because that is very, very helpful. And sometimes one of the more daunting aspects of a research project, right? Grateful Kangaroo writes, extensive background in academia, both in the classroom and support, and then background in teaching and conducting research. So yes, if you have background in conducting research, that is always something that is going to be a helpful skill to bring to a research collaboration. Organizing microlearnings, creating OER videos, and working with sessional instructors and students. So yes, I think those are really amazing skills. And thinking about microlearning, micro-credentialing, those kinds of things, I think that's really, really helpful. All right, we've got project management, PMP professional, qualitative and quantitative research background with humanities PhD and life science experience. So yes, Series Badger definitely has some great background to work with. Working with Indigenous knowledge, that's so important, and I really appreciate seeing that. So yeah, I think we definitely want to ensure that we're able to include Indigenous knowledge in our research projects when possible. Experience publishing student work, knowledge of queer and trans issues. Instructional design, identifying questions specific to local projects. That's really great. I like that one. I'm good at finding unlikely partners and translating between people with different experiences or backgrounds. Love that. Y'all are amazing. Y'all are bringing all kinds of amazing things to the table. So I love this. I love seeing all these different skills here. Leadership of learning communities and instructional design expertise, breaking things so they can be fixed, and writing reviews. Yes, sometimes things need to be broken up a little bit so that you can see if you can make them work better. Background in K-12. For an introvert, I'm weirdly unafraid to drop an email, DM, or walk up and just talk to someone. Yes, that's amazing. I love the power of being able to be a cold caller because I'm not always that person. Okay, so in the interest of time, let's go ahead and move into our next question. We've got 3 more questions. We've got just a couple more minutes left. So let's go ahead and take these kind of questions together if possible. So what skills or qualities are you looking for in a collaborator? So let's see, we have Childless Duck Lady says, someone who wants to experiment and learn with me. Reliability and follow through. Yeah, I think those are very Very helpful qualities. Any other thoughts, skills, or qualities you're looking for? Someone who will do their best to work, do their work by the deadline. Yes. And responsibility. I love that. Somebody who can help keep you accountable. I think that's, for me, that's such a key thing. Having somebody who kind of helps you and, doesn't like force you, but like helps keep you on track, willing to work outside the box, differing perspectives in work environment. Yeah, I think we need to coin that one, responsibility. I love it. Taking responsibility and being honest about what one can do. I think that's so important, being honest about your capacity. Process friendly, STEM background to match my humanities background. Awesome. Okay. And then we have a couple more questions here. So what questions or hesitations do you have about collaborating on research with others? So we have one response so far. My admin institution is not very good about giving us time outside of our jobs, and I'd worry I'd be a burden for a group. I think that's a very valid concern. And yeah, it's tough when you don't have that administrative support. I'm just going to pop over to the next question. So what excites you about collaborating on research with others? And I'll go ahead and pop back over here. Differing agendas. Yeah, so having different goals. And I think it's important to, spend the time to really kind of establish what your goals are at the outset of a project so that you both can, or you as a group, depending on how many folks are involved, you can really like make sure that you all have a good sense of what done looks like for you all. Sharing responsibility for different tasks, writing together with one voice. Yeah, I think having those kinds of skills to kind of bring cohesion back to the group and the writing project specifically, if it's a writing project. Data collection, that can be a challenge. Capacity in managing different schedules. That's, of course, always a challenge when it comes to working in a collaborative environment. I can see the winds of change at my institution, but what if things change with their institutions? That's a great point. Sometimes there are things that are outside of control. Time zones, and then lack of relevant knowledge to inform research on specialized topics. So yeah, I think those are all valid concerns or hesitations, questions. So I think those are great things to bring up in kind of establishing, kind of embarking on this. Okay, so very quickly, I'm a little bit over time. So any exciting things about collaborating on research? So making connections, finding like-minded people to talk to, getting new ideas and reigniting passion, not being stuck in my own head and hearing others' ideas that's such a wonderful benefit. Sharing the workload and new ideas. So lots of ideas, lots of new ideas, new perspectives. I think that's generally the love is I'm seeing very strongly here, reaching beyond my known network. So like not just the people and hopefully this event is a good opportunity to meet some new people that you maybe haven't worked with in the past. All right. So I think that's a great place to end that activity for now. This Padlet will remain open, so please continue to add your thoughts. But I think in the interest of time, make sure we have enough time for everyone. We'll go ahead and go back into our slideshow, and I'll hand it back over to Barb.
Thanks, Kate. It was kind of a neat note to end on the excitement that folks have. Thank you all for contributing to that. It was fun to see it kind of popping in there so lively. I think it's great to see the energy. It's also great to have that honesty about kind of some of the reality or challenges that might come along with collaborations, but love that you all have such passion and curiosity of potentially participating, collaborating with one another. Also, that question 4 is just such a testament to all of the knowledge and talent that we've got in our community and how important a tool like this is to really bridge those great ideas and experience and kind of help bring them to life for the broader open education community to benefit from. So while our team is kind of working behind the scenes here to create breakout rooms based on some of the things that you shared in the Padlet, we wanted to highlight a few ways for you to continue the momentum around connection during today's session. So like I said, in a moment, Kate will fill you in on how the breakouts work. So stick around if you're interested in that piece. And then if you'd like to receive updates on when folks add their names and project ideas or requests to the scholarship matchmaking spreadsheet, we encourage you to turn on notifications as noted on that introductory tab of the spreadsheet. We also are planning, the event planning committee is working on hosting a follow-up session to this one in January to check back in on any connections that were made via the spreadsheet or projects for 2026 and beyond. So stay tuned to the Google group and the Community Hub calendar for more on that when plans are finalized. We have also, Abby Childs is amazing and behind the scenes working both on the breakout room themes as well as populating the scholarship matchmaking Spotify playlist to help inspire your project work time. So once she's got a handle of that, we'll drop the link in the chat. You can also see it here. And then before we conclude, we hope that each of the sessions this week gives you an opportunity to connect with fellow members. And I just wanted to point out that we're hosting 2 sessions on Friday that focus specifically on building these connections. The first is cultivating community in times of uncertainty, as Dave also mentioned in our first session. That's happening at 10:30 a.m. Central. And then Friday at 1 p.m. Central, we've got the Colleague Connector Summer Edition, where you'll have a chance to meet fellow community members in small groups to connect on your work, some of these themes perhaps, the OEN Engage experience, and what inspires you as an open education practitioner. So let's see if we've got those breakout rooms together. Back to you, Kate.
Great. Thanks so much, Barb. And thanks to all the people working in the background on making this event successful. So speaking of a chance to meet your fellow members, we've got an optional community check-in now for those of you who are interested. If you would prefer to pass on this part of the session, you do have our permission to log off for now. But whatever you decide, we're so glad that you joined us today, and we hope that this has helped inspire your collaboration process.